Hey, welcome to Faith and Calm. This is class number 146, a special surprise pre-Purim class. And because we didn't announce it, we didn't announce it. So yeah, there's surprises and miracles for Purim. I guess that's what it is.
Mention
So
that we're preempting the
yeah,
tonight's class.
right, because tonight's class it's Purim, so we're just not able. We're going to be too busy to be able to do a class tonight. But you can listen to this at your leisure. So I wanted to say just some key points about Purim, and then illustrate it with a story. The point that I wanted to bring across was, of course, that we dress up, we put a costumes on Purim. And the question is, why? I mean, it doesn't look like there's a lot of, it's not mentioned. Who's in costume in the Purim story? All right. So the answer is yes, everybody was in costume because there's a story underneath the story, and the world conceals and hides what the true reality is. Esther, of course, was pretending not to be Jewish, but she was keeping kosher. Achashverosh was pretending to be a king, but he really wasn't much of a king because he was asking everybody for advice, and he wasn't, and he seemed very weak. So, not very decisive king is not a king. Of course, he did make some decisions, and then many other things. It seemed like it was terrible for the Jews, and they were going to be wiped out. And that really wasn't the story. It was going to become a great holiday for the Jews, but we didn't know that at the time. So this is the same. If we really understand the world, the Purim story is about us today. It says that if you read the Purim story and you think like it's something that happened in the past, that you read it backwards, then it's not kosher. So the Rebbe explained that if you read the Purim story and you think like it's a story that's something that happened in the past and it isn't relevant to every single day and every single moment of your living, then you really don't understand the Purim story. The Purim story is that what we think is happening in our lives and what's going on with our lives is often not the real story. And really, sometimes it's much, much better than we thought. In the Purim story, everybody thought they were going to be wiped out, man, women, and children. There was no place to run away. There was no country. He controlled every single country. It was worse than every other time. The Holocaust, at least you could go to America. You could get away. In Purim, there was nowhere to go. It was going to be a complete genocide of the Jewish people. And it didn't turn out that way. It turned out to be one of the best holidays around. So that's true also with many times when we see disaster in our lives, because you see sometimes in the way of nature is, you look at your situation and you say, I'm not going anywhere and this is hopeless. And your friends may even say it also logically, I don't know, can't help you. You're in big trouble and things are not, the doctor gives you a bad diagnosis, etc., like that, and doesn't look like things are going to turn out well. And the Purim story is they can change in a moment. Everything can go the opposite way because nature, this is the lesson here, nature is just a garment, it's a concealment, it's a costume, it's a mask for what really what's underneath the surface, which is God is running the show. It looks like that it's nature, that every day the sun comes up in the east and sets in the west. The truth of the matter is that's just because God decided that today to do that again that way. But if he doesn't decide to do it that way, then it's nature that goes the opposite direction. Like, for example, when the Jews were in the wilderness, in the Midbar, man used to come down, the food, every day from heaven. So they felt that the manna was natural. That natural way is food falls from the sky. That was nature. So if this had been happening to us, we'd say that's nature. The same thing is, they said that, what? So there's COVID and, the world has changed and it's a new world now and so forth. Yeah. It happened instantaneously. It went from one world to the other and it can change back to the other world. They said that communism was never going to collapse, right? And I listened to them. I listened to all the TV pundits, and they were all announcing that, the Gorbachev may give up one country, Yugoslavia, but never the whole thing. And you know what? Now the nature is communism is kaput. So they all made good sense. They were all logical. They thought that what nature runs in a certain way. And you know what? God's in charge every single moment, and that's a good thing. He's in charge. Nature is just whatever God decides today to do. and it's just a mask for what is going on underneath the surface. So I'm going to explain this with a story that also illustrates the same sort of idea. So the story I read in a little book called Small Miracles by Jette Halberstein, I think it is. Jette Halberstein. And they're all a bunch of cute little stories. I think you'd like it very much if you read it. So this story definitely went home to me. And the story goes as follows. She changes the names of the people in the story. So I'll use names, but they're not, I don't know what the real names were anyway. But they are true stories. So there's a boy named Joey Rifkin. He lived in Cleveland, Ohio, and he grew up in a religious family. And he went to day school, but he was in the 1960s, and everybody was wearing blue jeans and rebelling, and against their parents and everything else. And the Spirit came to him too, and he decided that he was going to go off to India and find himself. So his father was a tolerant, liberal person, and his friends said to be nice to him. And so he said, okay, whatever you want to do. But then Joey said, yeah, and I'm dropping all this Jewish stuff. It's like, I can't stand it anymore. And his father blew up at him because his father was a Holocaust survivor named Adam Rifkin. And when he got out of the camps, he promised to his family, who didn't exist anymore, but he said, nobody's left in my family except for me, and I'm going to continue the Jewish religion. I'm going to keep Judaism alive. And so when his kid was saying, I'm going to drop all Judaism, it was just too much for him. And he yelled at him, and he said something that was very harsh. And he said, if you're going to drop Judaism, then you're not my son anymore. Just do whatever you want to do. So Joey said, fine, that's exactly what I want to do. And he ran away and he went to India. And he bumbled around and he went from place to place and he explored the ashrams and he did the whole India kind of thing. And after a while, he came across a girl whose name was Sarah. And Sarah happened to come from a similar background. She came from a religious family, and she also had decided to rebel and to run away from her Judaism. And she was in India exploring. And they went around together. And they were great friends because they understood each other. They could relate to each other. They knew their background. And so they spent years together traveling from one place to another, this ashram to this ashram, exploring India. And one day they happened to be together in Bombay, and they met a guy whose name was Sammy. Sammy came from Cleveland too. And Joey said to Sammy, Sammy, what are you doing here? He said, I came to India. I wanted to explore. He says, Sammy, says, how's things back home? And he says, oh, they're okay. And he says, and how's my parents? And Sammy goes, you didn't hear about your father? You heard about your father? He said, no. He says, your father had a heart attack a few months ago. So Joey goes, no, I didn't know. We were traveling. I didn't hear anything. I didn't know at all. And Joey starts to think, and he says, my father had a heart attack, but I know why he had a heart attack. He died of a broken heart. He died because of me. And he just couldn't sleep. Night after night, he stayed up, and he just was beside himself because he felt that he was the one responsible for his father's heart attack. His father died of a broken heart attack and death. So he told Sarah, he said, listen, this India thing is just not working for me anymore. I'm going, I'm leaving. I feel like I have to go to Israel to clear my mind, to see what's going on. So Sarah goes, Israel? Isn't that what we tried to get away from, why? But he says, no, I feel I really have to. So she says, all right, if you feel we have to go to Israel, I'm going with you. Because we're soulmates, we're together. We align with each other. So I'll go with you. So they get on a plane. They come to Israel, and then he tells her. He says, "Listen, I'm going to go. I want to go to Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, and pray." And she says, "Fine. You'll find a synagogue, and you can go in and pray. I'll stand outside." And he says, "No. I want to go to the Kosel." And she says, "You want to go to a wall? What are you going to there for? What's the point?" And they get into an argument. And finally he says, "I'm going whether you agree or not." And she says, "I guess we're not in alignment anymore." And she goes her way, and he goes to the Kosel. And he finds a sitter there, And he starts praying with the other people there. And he finds that, the words just come very easily to him, even though he hadn't used them in years and years. Somehow at the Kosel, it's just a very easy ability, just the words just flow out of him. And then at the end, he sees people are sticking notes into the wall, into the Kosel. So he asks, what's this? And they say, you can put your prayers in there and they're heard. So he takes out a piece of paper and he writes down his note, and he writes down a note to his father. And he's saying, I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to disappoint you. And I promise that, that I'm not going to throw in my Judaism. And I just hope that you can somewhere in Shemayim in heaven, you're going to hear me. And he writes that down on his note. And then he tries to stick it into the wall. And as you know, those who people have been there, there's not a lot of room in the cracks between the rocks, and they're pretty much stuffed with notes. So it's not so easy. So he's looking around. He spends an hour. He finally finds a little place where he can finally stick in his note, and he starts pushing it in and pushing and pushing and pushing, and he gets it in. But the problem is another note pops out. There wasn't really any room. And for some reason, he didn't even realize why, he decides he's going to open up that note. He opens up that note and he sees handwriting and he recognizes it. And he starts reading it and he says, it's a note to Joey. And it says, dear Joey, he says, I never wanted to hurt you. I always loved you. You'll always be my beloved son. I will never cut you off, and so forth. And it's signed Adam Rifkin of Cleveland, Ohio. And he sees it's his father's handwriting. It's his father's note. Of course, that's too much for him. And he realizes that he got answered, it's just not normal. Who would have known? He didn't know his father came to Israel and wrote a note and was hoping that he would read the note. Anyway, he decides that this is a sign, and he decides to go off to yeshiva. And he goes to yeshiva and he starts learning, and he's there for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And after a while, the Rosh Yeshiva calls him in and says, Joey, you've really progressed a tremendous amount. You're a fine young man now. And I think it's time that you're older now. You should think about marriage. And my wife is a bit of a Rebbitzin. She's a Rebbitzin. And she thinks she's a shotgun too. And so she thinks she has a girl for you. So Joey says, okay, fine. So they're going to meet Friday night at the rabbi's house. So Joey comes in, he comes to the house, and he sees the girl on the couch, and he looks and he sees it's Sarah. The Rebbitzin had an idea that they were a match. She didn't know Sarah knew Joey, but she felt that they were both like Baal Tshuva and they would fit together. They're coming back. So Joey looks at Sarah and says, Sarah, what are you doing here? She says, well, after we split up, I figured, I might try out some of the things. Here I am in Israel, and I ended up in a women's yeshiva, and I liked it in the seminary. And of course, this is the rest of the story. So he says, Sarah, I never stopped thinking about you. Sarah says, yeah, I guess we're back in alignment again. And that's the end of the story. But I think the story is the story of Purim in a modernized form. It looked like, no, they weren't suited for each other. No, it looked like Joey killed his father. And underneath the surface, it was all God orchestrating, like the director on a play, a shadow play. And what we see and what we understand about what's going on the surface of what is happening with our lives is not necessarily what is really happening and what God is really preparing for ourselves. And all of this is part of an important mission that we have in this world to transform this world. And every mitzvah we do, it causes a wow factor above, because wow, you do something, you pray and something like that, and it doesn't look like that has any connection to what's going to happen. And you do one good act, you do one good deed, and you have no idea how that cascades like those nuclear explosions. One atom hits another, and it causes a chain reaction, and it causes a transformation. So I wish you all a very, very happy Purim, and may you all create
the laws of Purim. Share the laws of Purim.
Okay, so and my wife will just do a quick take for her part, and she's going to give the laws of Purim.
Okay. Show me the recording is on. Okay, good. So wasn't expecting to be on the screen and
Recording's
yeah,
on.
I'm so pale. Okay, good, but here it is. Um, the laws of Purim. So on Purim Day, which is tomorrow, Tuesday, you should have a very nice meal with bread and wash for the bread and with that, the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and it's called the Purim Feast. There's also, many shuls have them ongoing on tomorrow. You can find out if you have a local shul. You can find out when their feast is if they have one, and it's very very important on Purim. All the mitzvahs of Purim, um, or a lot of Purim is about brotherly love, because what did Haman, sisterly love, whatever you want to say, because what did Haman accuse the Jewish people of? He accused them when he said to Ahasuerus, "We should get rid of this people. They're scattered. They don't help each other." And so he didn't say they don't help each other, but he said they're scattered and they're not united. So everything we do on Purim is to show unity, and we have feasts with other people. We give charity to two poor people, not just one, and we give each one at least enough. You can give more than to just two, but at least two, and we give each one enough to buy a nice meal. Even if you don't see any poor people, put something in an envelope ready to mail, or mail it to some worthy organization, worthy Jewish organization. And the third thing that we do is we listen to the Megillah. We listen to the Megillah tonight and tomorrow, anytime tomorrow during the daytime before sunset, and tonight after dark, like after 6 o'clock or whatever. And let's see, that's Matanas Le'Avionim. We listen to the Megillah twice. Matanas Le'Avionim is gifts to the poor, listening to the Megillah. Uh, um, uh, yeah, the last one is the most famous one, which is Mishalach Manas, which is giving a gift of food to one friend, at least one friend. People do a lot more than one friend, but you need to give like a you need to give you need to give let's say a little bag or a basket or something like that, um, with at least two different types of foods. So, for example, if you give somebody an orange, um, you would want to the you need to give them that an orange grows on the tree on a tree. We say bere pri ha'etz. So we would give to give an orange and an apple is not a good shalach manas because they both have the same blessing. So you would give an orange and a banana, or you can give a cake and a drink, or I'm sure you get the idea. So it is giving gifts to the poor, giving a gift, at least one gift of food with two different types of food in it to another Jew, listening to the Megillah, and what's the other one? And the feast, the Purim feast. And with that, I'm going to wish you all a very, very happy Purim, and we look forward to seeing you live, live on Zoom next week. Thank you so much for joining us.